It's uncovered. It's Wednesday, the 22nd? 22nd, I think. Someone wrote to me, Ron, and they said, please say the actual date
Oh,
and not just Wednesday. And so I'm very happy to oblige. It's the 22nd. We are live here on the Midas Touch Network. He's Ron Filipkowski, former federal prosecutor, former Republican who changed his mind about his whole way of life when Donald Trump got elected. Is that fair to say, Ron? Is that fair to say?
Probably not the whole way of life, but a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Anthony Davis, and we've got a lot to talk about today. So much has happened. It feels like it's been 2 weeks since we last met, even though it's only been 1 week, simply because so much seems to have happened between then and now. Let's start with the trial, the Donald Trump's criminal trial, to be specific. And, of course, the news that you predicted, in fact, we all predicted, that he was never going to testify. So just kind of lead us into this.
The part that I don't understand is why before every trial, sorry, I keep losing my camera here.
You do?
Yeah.
I think keep talking for now, and maybe it'll come back.
All right. So I've got an old picture there on the screen.
Well, I just like looking at a picture of you with hair in a suit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a fantasy of mine.
So the part that I don't understand is why he always comes out and says that he's going to testify, which he does before every trial. And I just don't understand it, because he has to know that he's not going to. I'm sure he knows that. His lawyers never prepared him to testify at all. So it just makes no sense whatsoever for him to, every single trial he does this. He goes out and he pledges he did it before E. Jean Carroll. He did it before the civil fraud trial in New York, and he did it again this time. So then he always has to come out looking like a fool, like a liar. He should just say, look, I'm thinking about it. We'll see how the case goes. We'll make our decision at the end of the case. That's like the smart, sane, normal, rational thing to do. But Trump never does anything that way. He's always got to pound his chest and have the false bravado and act like the tough guy in front of his fans. But it always makes him look like a fool to everybody else.
And the fans kind of want him to testify because, they believe all this garbage that he spouts about it being a witch hunt and a kangaroo court. And they're like, the best way for him to deal with this is, to get up there and tell them the truth. I'm going to show a clip, and maybe while I'm showing this clip, Ron, you can leave and unplug your camera and plug it back in again and see if we can get your beautiful face back.
All right.
And then I'll talk a little bit about it once it's finished. Here it is.
One thing I am glad about, as he was leaving court the other day, he said, yes, I will testify. Now, most defense attorneys would say, no. But in this case, Brian, it's the right thing to do, and I'll tell you why. Because everything is stacked against him. The judge, the jurors, he will never get a fair trial. This is their only chance at a true conviction. The man wants to get up there, look those jurors in the eyes, and fight. That's what he does. And he's not going to go quietly, and he shouldn't. He's going to get up there, say what he has to say, fight till his very last breath. But that is the right thing to do because he is being...
Yeah, that's exactly what Donald Trump didn't do. Ron will come back when he gets his camera sorted. He's had a small problem with it. I think it's underinvestment in his equipment, but that's another conversation. I feel like the trial has been there's been huge build-up, and with Donald Trump, every day after the court coming out and making this weird impromptu speech where he repeats the same thing, he actually got very very xenophobic, referring to Judge Juan Merchan as, he said, just look at him. Just look at him. He was referring to the fact that he's non-white, right? He's actually Colombian, I think. And also Judge Eileen Cannon, I think, is Colombian as well. But that's not the point. The point is that Trump had literally run out of things to say to protect himself in this situation. And so he just went for the race card. He literally was like, just look at him, just look at him. And you probably saw that clip. I think Ron tweeted it. And it reminded me that, so much of this whole case is about Trump thinking that because he is white and wealthy and male, and especially in New York where he feels like, he's the king of the city, that he has the right to get away with whatever he wants to get away with, simply because he is a white wealthy man, and therefore the law does not apply to him. Sorry, Ron. I was just saying that I was just talking about Trump outside the courtroom, where he actually made a reference to the judge's race yesterday, when he was just like, just look at him, just look at him. And I said he's Colombian. I think that Juan Merchan is Colombian, right? And the point I'm making, for those listening on the audio podcast, Ron dropped off for a second, so I'm having to relay to him what we were just discussing. The fact that he's literally run out of options, he's not prepared to testify, and so his last-ditch attempt at saving his skin is claiming that it's that the judge is racist towards Trump because he is not a white American.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere, because I was a little surprised he went there, because he's slandered the judge for a lot of other things, in the past, but not that. So I think what triggered him was he was so upset about what happened with Robert Costello's testimony, who was, the former Giuliani associate attorney, who I think he really thought was going to be a big key witness for him, and turned out to be a complete disaster. So when Trump made that comment, that was when he had just walked out of there after that happened. And also, I think Trump is a little frustrated, as am I a little bit, by the fact that Merchan has not ruled on his motion to dismiss. So Trump, he woke up that morning saying that he was hoping that the judge was going to be a hero and do the right thing and see the light and toss the case out. But oddly, Merchan has not ruled on that motion to dismiss, which was made Tuesday, I think, it was made Monday, and he still hasn't ruled. And he went ahead and had a charge conference where he went over the jury instructions, which normally you would not do if you were going to grant a motion to dismiss. So, it just made no sense whatsoever. And, so I think that's kind of what caused him to come completely unglued.
Why hasn't he ruled on the motion to dismiss? What is your theory on that?
There's been different theories. I think probably the main thing is that this is a unique situation, a novel situation legally, in terms of you don't typically see this statute applied in the way it's being applied in this case, which I don't think is wrong, but I think it's different. It's creative. And so I think that obviously he knows that this is going to be appealed, Merchan, and he doesn't want his rulings to be overturned. He doesn't want the conviction to be overturned, if there is one. And so I think what he wants to do is do a thorough written order where he states all of his legal reasonings for not granting the motion to dismiss, something that will hopefully withstand any appeal. So he doesn't want to just make a quick off-the-cuff verbal ruling. He wants to put it in writing and make it very detailed.
And Robert Costello was kind of a weird person to bring in, wasn't he? Because he's very characterful, straight out of Goodfellas. you might argue. He's done a bit of time himself, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's a strange guy. He's kind of all over the place. I think what became very clear is when his text messages between him and Cohen were brought in by the prosecutor. And this is what caused his testimony to be a complete disaster. You really got to see what a shady operator this guy was. And those text messages completely contradicted his direct examination. And what they showed was he wasn't really trying to represent Michael Cohen and do what was in the best interest of Michael Cohen. He was acting like a mob lawyer who had been hired by the mob boss to make sure that one of his capos didn't flip on him and testify against him. So, and that's very common in the mob, for the mob boss to hire the attorneys for the people who could testify against him to make sure they don't flip. And that's exactly what they were doing with Cohen. They wanted to stick Costello on Cohen, make him Cohen's lawyer, to make sure that he would never go against Trump. That was his mission. That's why Giuliani sent him to do this. And Cohen was smart enough to pick up on this. His instincts were buzzing. His spider sense was telling him, this is not a guy that's looking out for my best interest. And so he ultimately ended up rejecting him. But that's why Costello came out looking really bad, is when those text messages were brought in.
Donald Trump is always waving those papers around outside the courtroom, isn't he? And claiming that, these are documents of coverage of the media, claiming that this whole thing, that there's no case. And he often references Alan Dershowitz, who, of course, has had his back for years and has his own trouble to deal with. Let's take a look at this clip of Dershowitz talking about Costello's testimony on Fox.
I rolled my eyes when the judge made some rulings that were absurd. Any first-year evidence student would understand that he was making biased rulings in favor of one side. I stared him down, but Costello didn't. He acted like a normal witness, and the judge went berserk. The judge violated Trump's constitutional right to a public trial by kicking the media out of the courtroom. I don't know.
Is that true, in your opinion?
No, I mean, look, I remember the days when Alan Dershowitz was a serious lawyer.
Yeah.
And
a scholar, right?
Yes. I mean, he was never a trial lawyer. He was an appellate lawyer, but he was a good appellate lawyer, and he knew the law. And ever since he hooked up with Donald Trump, like so many other people, this is the same story over and over again. That they had good reputations, successful careers, they were highly regarded, et cetera, et cetera. Then they hook up with Trump, and in a few short years, everything is in shambles and they're talking crazy. And that's really what happened. He's saying right here in that clip, what he just said is that when Costello, who kept rolling his eyes and staring down the judge whenever he would sustain an objection, and acting like a fool, Mershon finally had enough and cleared the courtroom so that he could give this guy a little 5-minute tongue lashing and then brought everybody back in.
Yeah.
What Dershowitz just claimed is by the judge doing that, which happens from time to time in court cases, that the case should be dismissed because Trump didn't have a public trial. There was no trial going on during that time when the courtroom was cleared. I mean, any first-year law student would know, any citizen would know that's an asinine position to take. And yet here is a Harvard law professor saying this on television.
Well, he's sold out, hasn't he? And doesn't that prove the point that everything that Dershowitz says is to protect Donald Trump, and that all of his legal experience and all of the kind of scholarly qualifications are irrelevant when he says something like that is so obviously biased that it undermines any other advice that he might be giving.
Yep, that's the point. And that's the point with all these guys, with Turley, all these people that he constantly cites are McCarthy. He cites the same 4 people over and over again.
Yeah. Jonathan Turley's one of the worst, right? I mean, Turley's
just a shill. Yeah. Another law professor who's just destroyed his reputation shilling for Trump. Who's the other guy that he always cites? Another Fox analyst. I forget his name, but there's 4 people that he constantly cites over and over again. And it's like, hey, he keeps saying every legal scholar agrees that there's no case. Yeah. Well, if that's true, why do you keep citing the same 4 people that all work for you or for Fox?
Yeah, I mean,
Greg Jarrett, that's the other one.
Right. Yeah. And then there are other surrogates like Victor Hanson Davis and people like that who kind of come on, and they also give a kind of constitutional position on these things. And he's a Federalist Society guy, isn't he? And unfortunately, the problem is that here in the US, I get the feeling that if people act serious and wear a suit, they're not just like down with street culture, but they just like dressed up a bit like you in that little picture there. That's a photo of you being a conservative, I can tell. In fact, you're wearing the Trump uniform. Actually. Yeah,
I even got like a Trump tie there.
Right?
Yeah.
You could have shown up at the courtroom to intimidate everybody. That people tend to look at those things and be like, oh yeah, well it must be true because the person's got a tie on. And I'm not, I'm simplifying things obviously, but it's very frustrating because the world doesn't work like that. And so I think that hopefully this time around people are starting to realize that a lot of these so-called experts are not really worth the ties that they're printed on. Listen, what I thought we'd do, because I want to get your camera back, because it's unfair that people have to look at you from 40 years ago. How long ago was that photo, incidentally?
That photo's like, it's like 15 years ago.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to leave it up there. But what I'm going to do is
I have hair, and it's
you
got
had
color,
some hair.
too.
Yeah, it's kind of cropping you off. I can't see what's going on up top, but it looks fantastic. Get some of that spray. We were talking about that the other day. What I was going to suggest you do, and people in the comments I'm sure are going to say this is how you fix your camera on. Just make sure you don't have Zoom open or any of those other apps. You're probably still on Skype, I presume. And make sure they're all quit so that they're not stealing the camera.
All right.
I'll go to the commercial break, and we'll come back and see if we have you in the flesh, and then we'll be able to continue. All right. So we're back after this here on Uncovered. Have you heard about senolytics yet? It's a class of ingredients discovered less than 10 years ago, and they're being called the biggest discovery of our time for promoting healthy aging and enhancing your physical prime. Your life goals in your career and beyond require productivity. But let's be honest, the aging process is not our friend when it comes to endless energy and productivity, and that's why I use Qualia Senolytic. If someone would have told me that there was science-backed ingredients that could help me feel 15 years younger in a matter of months, I wouldn't have believed it. Then I tried Qualia Senolytic. As we age, everyone accumulates senescent cells in their body. Senescent cells cause symptoms of aging, such as aches and discomfort, slow workout recovery, sluggish mental and physical energy associated with that middle-age feeling. Also known as zombie cells, they are old and worn out and not serving a useful function for our health anymore, but they're taking up space and nutrients from our healthy cells. Much like pruning the yellowing and dead leaves off a plant, Qualia Senolytic removes those worn-out senescent cells to allow for the rest of them to thrive in the body. Resist aging at the cellular level. Try Qualia Senolytic. Go to neurohacker.com/uncovered for up to $100 off and use code UNCOVERED at checkout for an additional 15% off. That's neurohacker.com/uncovered for an extra 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Neurohacker, for sponsoring today's episode. Have you ever wished you had a whiter and brighter smile? Well, before you visit a dentist, you should know that whitening treatments there can be expensive, and it's not just the price. You also have to book the appointment and schedule time away from work or family to sit in a dentist's office and undergo the procedure. It's a hassle. Fortunately, now you can try Smile Actives at home or anywhere, anytime. Smile Actives offers a safe and affordable alternative to those expensive whitening procedures. 97% of Smile Actives users in a clinical trial reported up to 6 shades whiter on average, all within 30 days. Simply add Smile Active's Pro Whitening Gel to your regular toothpaste. It's been formulated with polyclean technology to boost stain removal and deliver active whitening ingredients into teeth's grooves and crannies to get better whitening. Smile Actives makes a teeth whitening gel that can simply be added to your toothbrush every time you brush your teeth. No change in your routine, no extra time, no more messy strips, trays, or lights. People will start commenting on your whiter, brighter smile in just days. Visit smileactives.com/uncovered today to receive a special buy one get one free offer with auto delivery plus free shipping and handling. That's smileactives.com/uncovered. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. We're back on the Uncovered. Ron is still sorting out his camera, so you're going to have to bear with us. And I appreciate that you have. I can see that everyone is still sticking around, and very grateful for that. We're obviously just starting this episode discussing the trial and looking at where it's at. Incidentally, they should be wrapping up in the next few days, and a verdict, I heard, could be happening by Monday or Tuesday. So that's certainly something to look forward to if you're desperate like I am to kind of see the end of this trial, because if Donald Trump is convicted, it's going to change everything. It's obviously the ruling in terms of if he goes to jail or not is something that everybody is hanging on a knife edge for, and how they do that. And as you know, we discussed last week that the Secret Service have been discussing how they would go about protecting him when he's in jail. If anybody didn't need protection, it'd be that guy. You know what I mean? But it's not just that. It's how it affects the election, which is now... It's not that far off, is it? I mean, I keep saying it's it's 7 or 8 months, but it really isn't. Where are we now? We're almost in June. July, August, September, October, November. It's literally 4 or 5 months away. And so we have a very interesting juncture here in American political history, in my view, and I'm sure you see it the same way, where the Republican candidate for president is potentially facing jail, and over a crime that he keeps admitting to. Whenever he goes into or comes out of the courtroom at the end of the day, he said it the other day. He goes, we put it down as a legal expense. And it's like, that's what the whole case is about, is that you put this down as a legal expense, and you just said out loud, we put it down as a legal expense. In fact, he said it twice, because he does like to say things twice. It's part of his, it's his autocratic tropes, keep repeating the same message. But what's so interesting about that is the fact that it's almost as if he doesn't know why he's there. He doesn't quite understand the magnitude of this crime in terms of election interference. And he refers to election interference and claims that that's what's happening to him. But that's what he did in 2016. By paying off a adult entertainment star, he didn't want to have his chances of an election being affected because of his relationship with Stormy Daniels. It's very simple, and yet he doesn't seem to understand that white-collar crime, as in, putting things, purposely moving things around in the ledger, is a crime in New York State and elsewhere. And certainly a crime when it comes to election interference. I mean, he's broken enough campaign finance laws, for goodness sake. I mean, the guy should really know his stuff. Ron, you decided to join us. Can you hear me? Oh, no, we're only halfway there today. He's doing his best. He's doing his best. There, I can hear. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You're back.
Sorry
Fingers
about
crossed
that.
for. I think maybe it might be that salmon pink shirt that you're wearing is the reason that it keeps.
I jinxed myself. Yeah.
So I was just talking about the fact that Trump keeps admitting to the crime when he's in front of the cameras after the case, and that the other day, or maybe yesterday, he said, we put it down as a legal expense. And this time he didn't say they put it down as a legal expense. He said we put it down as a legal expense. I mean, is that not an admission of guilt?
Yeah, because of course, what his defense is that Weisselberg and Cohen did that, and he had nothing to do with it. That was something that was some kind of thing that they came up with as far as how Cohen was going to be reimbursed,
right?
And that had nothing to do with him. So if in fact those payments were reimbursement for Stormy, he didn't know anything about it. That's basically Trump's defense. But he contradicts that by saying we. And the main problem with that defense is the idea that Trump, who all the testimony from every one of his employees in this trial said that he was a micromanager that was involved in every single aspect of his businesses.
Yeah.
The idea that
because he's tight.
CFO,
he's famously tight. He doesn't
every penny.
Right. Yeah.
His comptroller said that he would be fired if he paid a bill in full. He had to renegotiate every incoming bill.
So bad.
So, I mean, that's how much Trump kept tabs on everything. So the idea that his CFO would go ahead and pay Michael Cohen $420,000 of Trump's money without running that by Trump is inconceivable.
It's very interesting, isn't it, that maybe this is how rich people stay rich, is just by not spending it. And there's that famous video you'll probably remember where he's got cash in his hand. Isn't he like sitting at an event or something, and he counts some cash out of his hand?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that one? And then,
I've seen him do that many times.
Right,
yeah.
but he I don't know what the dollar bills are that he's counting. Maybe $10 bills or something, $20 bills. But he counts them, but he keeps some back. So he's obviously going to tip or charity. I don't know what it was for. But I was like, if you're as rich as you claim to be, surely you're going to just give all the money that you've got in your pocket. Why are you holding $20 back? It's just so weird.
He does that to the Mar-a-Lago staff when there's cameras on him. When he knows that he's being filmed, and when he's got a bunch of people around, he will stop somebody walking by who's an employee and peel off some money and give it to him because he wants to be seen as, the big man and very generous. Yeah.
Just like when he goes into Chick-fil-A and says, I'll buy milkshakes for everyone, and he buys 6 milkshakes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about these surrogates that have been coming up and behaving like henchmen or heavies, all dressing the same in their kind of Mormon Trump uniform to put pressure on the jury or the press. I mean, what's the story behind all of these characters that are showing up? Because they haven't really been getting the response that they want. In fact, let me show the clip of the press dealing with them.
Real prosecutor doesn't prosecute.
Go home, you carpetbagging move.
What's happening here?
This is accomplishing nothing. I mean, this is like the dog and pony show where you have to look at it two ways. Like, what's the purpose? The purpose is supposed to be, in Trump's eyes, for them to give out for them to soak up press coverage, for the coverage to not be of what's happening in the courtroom, but what's happening outside with his statements and with these surrogate statements. That's the goal here. And so that's what he's trying to do. So what happened is the first couple times that sort of went smoothly, but as you can see this last time, protesters showed up, quite a lot of them, and completely disrupted the event and sort of drowned it out and wrecked it on them. And that's what happened. So yeah, to me, like, the point is to get their talking points out, but really what these people are doing there is kissing the ring. These are people who are Trump sycophants, who kiss up to Trump or who want something from Trump. They want a job in the administration, they want an appointment, or they want an endorsement. And that's really why they're there. They're not accomplishing anything in terms of what the Trump campaign hopes that they're going to accomplish. And you saw in that video clip, by the way, Jason Miller scurrying away when Trump's campaign manager, when he realized what a disaster this was. He got himself out of that situation pretty fast. But yeah, this has not gone according to plan at all for Trump.
Aren't they also there to circumnavigate the gag order? Because this is the other thing, isn't it, that we're hearing from his surrogates, both outside the courtroom and on television, is that Trump has obviously briefed them as to what he would say if the gag order was not in place, and then they're just basically doing his bidding.
Yeah, well, that's true. And in fact, that's a lot of them. That's what they were doing at the beginning. The first few days was repeating the stuff that's covered by the gag order. But the last few days, they sort of got further and further away from that. We're just condemning Joe Biden and the court system generally, lawfare, all their usual talking points. So they strayed a little bit away from the gag order in the last few groups of people that came up. But yeah, that was the original point of this stuff was to do that.
Let's talk about this hoax assassination. This is a very weird thing that kind of suddenly happened. Was it yesterday or the day before now, where Marjorie Taylor Greene started posting about this? I'll put it up on the screen so people can see. She said, "I made sure that he knew the Biden DOJ and FBI were planning the assassination of President Trump and gave the green light. Does anyone get it yet? What are Republicans going to do about it? I tried to oust our speaker who funded Biden's DOJ and FBI, but Democrats stopped it." I mean, this is insane, isn't it? The idea that Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, I'm saying it previously, like they're literally running out of stuff to do. They've run out of options because ultimately Trump keeps admitting to the crime and, the crime is the crime and the law is the law, but it doesn't really work for them. Underneath, She says, wow, I just came. Oh, sorry. She's responding to Donald Trump's tweet. Or Truth, which is where he posts it. And Trump wrote, wow, I just came out of the Biden witch hunt trial in Manhattan. The icebox, of course, he refers to it as being freezing when it isn't. In fact, people are now taking thermometers in there and have discovered that it's a very comfortable 68 degrees. And was shown reports that crooked Joe Biden's DOJ, in their legal and unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago, authorized the FBI to use deadly lethal force. Now, we know for sure that Joe Biden is a serious threat to democracy. He is mentally unfit to hold office. 25th Amendment. I mean, talk about projection, you know? Talk about the fact that what we've got here is an unhinged candidate in Donald Trump, who has also run out of options. Marjorie Taylor Greene's along for the ride, and so that now they're using an assassination hoax as their last-ditch attempt to try and, you know, get this or get people on side.
Yeah, this is completely absurd. I mean, this is a new group of documents was released by the courts, as part of the documents case. That included the search warrant. It was a standard search warrant with standard language, which basically says if when agents are executing the search warrant, if somebody at the scene or inside the property uses deadly force against them, they are allowed to defend themselves with deadly force. Boilerplate language. It's in just about every single search warrant. Nothing unusual. But, the right-wing conspiracy machine, including Donald Trump, seized upon that language in the warrant and said, they were plotting to assassinate me. Well, how can they assassinate you if you're not even there? And they knew that he wasn't there. They wanted to execute the search warrant when Secret Service wasn't there, so there would be no issues. And so, peddling this stuff is incredibly dangerous. They're saying that there was a conspiracy between Joe Biden, the FBI, and the Department of Justice to assassinate the Republican nominee for president. That's how crazy these people have gotten. And they're serious about peddling this. Now, I will say it was just a small handful of people. It was just the real wingnut people online. But that included Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. It might be a small portion, but it included the former president and the candidate for president for November. Maybe I just had a thought as you were explaining that. Maybe he saw the paperwork for this new discovery about the new documents, and he saw the words execute the warrant, and he took the word execute and thought it meant assassination. What are the chances?
Well, he never read the warrant. I mean, he learned about this as he's leaving court, and he learned about it from Green. Green is the one who told him this. She got it from Julie Kelly, who's like a J6 conspiracy theorist who's written like an alternate history of January 6th.
She's the worst.
Where the FBI is behind the whole thing, right? So she's the one who started this. Green picked it up. Green forwarded that to Trump. Trump never read it. He just took Green's word for it. But then, he posted also on True Social. So the bottom line is that Trump is completely and thoroughly immersed in this QAnon-like conspiracy world. And we saw that again with the Nazi video that he posted, which came from, I know the group that it came from, and they're just some crazy extremist far-right people. And he just keeps posting stuff from these nutcases. And he's the Republican nominee for president. He's not just some yahoo on the internet with a show, you know?
And they looked at that Nazi video, that kind of Reich mention in the video, and then they looked at whether or not he'd posted previously from this group, and he'd done it multiple times. And it seems that you literally only have to say, I love Trump, and you get a retweet.
Well, and I can tell you that the people with his campaign have told him, stay away from that group. I'm not even going to mention their name, but I know who they are. Yeah. And I can tell you that the people high up in his campaign want Trump to have nothing to do with them, and have tried to keep those people away from his campaign events and away from him. They don't even want him being photographed with them. But they post things online and Trump finds them. and repost them. But of course, the other thing we don't know, because he blamed it on a staffer. Well, what we know from testimony in multiple court cases is that Dan Scavino has access to his social media account. So it could in fact be Scavino who's tapping into this stuff and throwing it up on Trump's social media account. But it doesn't matter. You can't just keep saying, oh, it wasn't me, it was Scavino, when it's coming from your account.
It makes me feel that this is a good example of how Trump would run his presidency and how he ran the last presidency. When you see how disorganized this is, where he's getting ideas from Marjorie Taylor Greene and from retweeting Nazi propaganda, I mean, all of this stuff, it's so base, it's so basic, it's so childish. It lacks any thought, it lacks any strategy. It really is like clutching at straws. And if this isn't an example to the nation of what a Donald Trump presidency would look like, where he is surrounded by sycophants and is living in this parallel universe of QAnon and nationalist Project 2025 agenda, I mean, it is another world from reality. And if he can't even get through a day in court without falling asleep or farting or being abusive or swearing, I mean, who is this guy? His election in 2016 was an anomaly. And now we've had to deal with him for these last 8 years, and it's exhausting.
And I can't emphasize this enough. The team that is around him, the group of people that he surrounds himself now with on a daily basis, is very different from 2016.
Right.
And even 2020. All the semi-normal people, all the semi-responsible people, they're all gone. And the people who have replaced them in his orbit are the craziest people around. And because these are the people that he likes now. These are the people he's comfortable with. They're the most sycophantic. They tell him what they want to hear. He loves these memes that show him with rippling muscles, yes, and show him himself as a superhero. I mean, what 77-year-old man has suddenly gotten into seeing himself as a comic book hero? But that's where we're at with this guy. He's really damaged mentally, psychologically, and he's really coming unglued. And I was thinking about this morning. I am almost less worried about Trump as himself personally as president, because I just really think that there's nothing especially that he wants to do. He just wants to avoid prison, and he just wants people fawning all over him and calling him sir. It's the other people around him that are going to do all the damage and going to do all the bad stuff. And I'm more afraid of them than I am of him.
And the playbook for that has been published in Project 2025. The people around him are smarter than he is. I mean, my 6-year-old is smarter than he is. But, the point is that he is now in such a place, he's so much on the back foot that he'll take anything. And if he's told something is a good idea and you should do it, he'll just do it. And because he doesn't have any scruples, he doesn't have any opinions, he doesn't have any position. I mean, look at him on abortion. He's admitting now, he did it at the NRA speech on Saturday, where he says, the problem is that Republicans need to learn how to talk about this. And what he means by that is you need to trick people into thinking that it's not going to be, that there won't be a federal ban on abortion when there will be, and how you pretend that it's going to be down to the states. The whole thing is an act. It's a production. And I'm hoping that with enough of these missteps that people start to see through the cracks.
I do too, and I hope that's. I've said for 9 months now that those key voters are going to really start paying attention in June, and there is a presidential debate in June.
Right.
And it's going to be hosted by Jake Tapper, who's a pretty tough interviewer. And so I think that I hope that the polls are going to start to move, even though I have no faith in the polls. But I think that the voters are going to start to move in June and July. I hope. I mean, it's hard to say. It's hard to get a gauge of anything because I do think that the polling industry are just so wrong and inaccurate that it's really just hard to get a gauge. We may really not have an accurate gauge of where this election is at until the votes are counted.
Yeah. He hasn't announced his VP pick yet. Your prediction is Elise Stefanik, right? You still sticking with that one?
Well, I mean, it's become even more obvious every day. I don't understand why I'm like the only one who's saying this.
Yeah,
everybody seems to be on these other people. I mean, to me, like it should. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off base, but everything points to Stefanik. Tim Scott is way too extreme on abortion. And I don't think he'd pick a black guy anyway. I think that's all nonsense.
Well, Tim Scott's just a bit of a joke, right? He's like,
and he's a joke. He's terrible.
Joke. But
I mean, but the thing is, he's so extreme on abortion. He's for no abortion ever. Life begins at conception, no exceptions. Trump understands that position will cost him this election. There's just no way he can take Tim Scott. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, Noam has taken herself out. Katie Britt has taken herself out. Meanwhile, what is happening? Stefanik is over in Israel speaking in front of their parliament, denouncing Joe Biden and filing bar complaints and judicial ethics complaints against Judge Merchan. I mean, it's all there for people to see. To me, it makes sense. People are saying, oh, it won't be Stefanik because she doesn't look the part. Look, Trump is fighting for his life right now. He's fighting to stay out of prison. You think he's going to get hung up on her looks if he thinks that she can put him in the White House? No way. So that, to me, it's just obvious that's who he's going to pick.
Well, let's take a look at Elise Stefanik now in Israel, making this case for Donald Trump without actually saying it. Here she is.
I have been clear at home, and I will be clear here. There is no excuse for an American president to block aid to Israel, aid that was duly passed by the Congress. There is no excuse to ease sanctions on Iran, paying a $6 billion ransom to the world's leading state sponsor of terror, or to dither and hide while our friends fight for their lives. No excuse, full stop. And it's why for years I have been a leading proponent and partner to President Trump in his historic support for Israeli independence and security, including moving the U.S. Embassy to its rightful place in Jerusalem, the negotiation of the historic Abraham Accords.
Yeah, the historic Abraham Accords, which were a bunch of baloney. Why do you think people say she doesn't look the part? What are they looking for? Kind of bleach blonde and, capped teeth and everything else? What are they looking for?
Yeah, I mean, they think that Trump wants to pick a Fox host. Look, no, Trump's not stupid, and the people around him aren't stupid in this regard. Okay. I mean, he's cunning and cagey. He understands what he needs to do here with this pick. But I will talk about this because there has always been, for many, many, many decades, probably since the United States has been a country, a tradition in American politics that you do not, as an elected official, go on foreign soil and denounce the U.S. government and U.S. policy.
Right.
We do that at home. I mean, yes, that's perfectly acceptable. If she wants to give that speech in the House, no one would have a problem with it. Where this is yet another norm and tradition in American politics and in American history that is being wrecked by Donald Trump. Because now we have politicians not only going into foreign countries like J.D. Vance has done and going to Hungary and all that and criticizing U.S. government policy on foreign soil. That's bad enough. But now you have Elise Stefanik addressing the parliament of a foreign country and denouncing U.S. foreign policy. I have two problems with this. One, her doing that. And let's not forget, Jane Fonda basically had her career destroyed for 20 years for doing that. And she was a private citizen, by going into North Vietnam while we were at war with North Vietnam and criticizing the U.S. And because If she had done it in the United States, no big deal. But the fact that she went on foreign soil and did it was the key, right? So that's one part. The other problem I have with this is Netanyahu's government inviting her to do this, to try and undermine policy of the Biden administration. Israel has always, throughout its history, been very careful not to take sides in U.S. elections, which is smart. And Zelensky, people in countries that depend on the United States for their security are careful not to do that. And yet Netanyahu has done that. He has taken sides in this election. And all I can say is, if he is still the prime minister of Israel after Joe Biden is reelected, that is not going to be good for Israel, because he has clearly taken sides in this election, which he should not do.
Well, because he has found a like-minded individual in Donald Trump. They are two sides of the same coin, aren't they?
Absolutely. And Orban, sure, they're very similar people. I tend to believe that the people of Israel are going to have had enough of him by then.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have thrown him out. But look, as long as the war is being prosecuted, that's probably not going to happen. And that's probably he has an incentive to prolong the war in that respect.
Let's take a quick look at our own Congress here and this war of words between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Representative Jasmine Crockett. It was very interesting when all of this kicked off. Do you want to just set it up before I show the clip?
Yes. Well, what's really the origin story of all of this is the fact that almost all the Republican, or at least half the Republican members of the Oversight Committee went up to the Trump's trial in New York City that day. So this hearing was supposed to be that afternoon, but they had to postpone it till 9 o'clock at night because all these knuckleheads, Gates not on the committee, but Green, Luna, all these other people were up there in DC with Trump. So they had to wait for them to get back. And this is the vote to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt of Congress. And they're up there fooling around in New York City with Trump and getting their FaceTime in front of the cameras. So they roll in late at night into DC, and it was pretty obvious, and other reports have talked about this as well, that they had been drinking, the Republicans who had been in New York, either on the plane, on the train, however they were traveling. Some of them were clearly inebriated, and they started doing foolishness and talking junk. And finally, Jasmine Crockett had enough and returned fire and sort of increased her legend in doing so.
Because it started with Marjorie Taylor Greene making reference to Jasmine Crockett's eyelashes, and I think Jasmine Crockett has actually kind of come out today and explained the situation and how it feels as a black woman to be ridiculed or criticized for appearance. But let's take a look at the clip of how it played out the other night.
Ms. Green, for 4 minutes and 21 seconds.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Who's
It's me.
Ms. Crockett?
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling. If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad-built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold on.
part of
I'm trying to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to strike those words.
I had no idea what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
You just voted to do it.
Y'all did it first, so you don't want to talk about it.
voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at calm down.
No, because this is what
like
y'all
to get
do.
through proceedings.
So I'm trying to get
Ms.
clarification.
Crockett, you're not
Y'all wanna
recognized.
play
Ms.
games?
I can't hear
Crockett.
you with your
And
yelling.
You don't want
calm
me to
down.
Be,
Can
no,
you please calm
don't
down?
tell me to calm down.
Calm down.
Because y'all
Please
talk
calm
noise,
down.
and then
You're
can't
out of
take
control.
Because if I
Look, Chairman, can
come
we
and
send
talk
outside to
shit
take a
about
break
her,
for 5
y'all
minutes?
gonna have a
Mr.
problem.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
Sorry.
Chair,
I don't know why
okay.
you're
Order.
acting
Chair
like
now
that.
I mean, this is starting to look as crazy as the British Parliament. I just can't believe that this is how government is being conducted, especially in an election year. I mean, it's just a mess. I mean, I'm firmly on Jasmine Crockett's team on this. I should say that.
Sure. Yeah, and they had been insulting her intelligence, commenting on her looks. It wasn't just that. And I think from Green's perspective, and she actually tweeted about this. Green is jealous of the popularity that the Democrats on this committee have garnered. You know, people like Raskin, Moskowitz, and Crockett, and she's jealous of that. And her complaint, her beef after the fact was like, oh, they insult me just as much, and yet they're heroes in the press and they're media darlings, and I get ridiculed, which of course is not true. But you know, that's what her main beef was. But
it's got nothing to do with public service. This is the other thing, isn't it? It's like there's 330 million people at home, like relying on government to function properly, to improve life for every American, and people like Marjorie Taylor Greene have no place in politics. Not because she's a Republican, but because she's not smart. And Crockett is a highly educated and respected and very eloquent person, and so unfortunately, same story with Donald Trump resorting to racism with the judge. Marjorie Taylor Greene resorts to racism with Jasmine Crockett here.
Yep, exactly right. So, yeah, that hearing was another disaster. And it made them look like clowns again. The Republicans on the committee, Luna, also at the end of there was talking about wanting to send at the end of the committee. This didn't get a lot of publicity, but she was talking at the end about having the House Sergeant at Arms go over and arrest Merrick Garland in the DOJ building and drag him out of there. Yeah. That's how nutty these people are, But look, that. You just got to hope that the American people are paying attention to some of this and look at this and they don't just throw up their hands and say, oh, both sides are doing this. And that's sort of the drawback of taking the bait and returning fire is, you tend to have some people go, oh, well, both sides were equally at fault because they don't recognize who started the whole thing.
Well, they also don't recognize that the Republicans have no policies. There's no policy. It is just dismantling existing policy and reversing existing policy and gutting the EPA and reversing Roe and all of that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, the Democrats, and this is something that you and I should do more of because this election is so pivotal to the forwarding of the human race, is to highlight quite how much policy the Democrats have and what it is that they have to offer and what Joe Biden has achieved. And in fact, someone wrote to me this morning or last night with a list, and they said, please read this out. So it would be remiss of me not to give it a little go. Would you mind? Would you just afford me a few seconds to do this?
Sure. Yeah.
Dow at an all-time record high under Joe Biden. 2 strongest years of job growth in history. Nearly 15 million jobs created since 2021. 3.5% unemployment rate, lowest in 50 years. Millions of Americans saving $800 a year on health insurance coverage. More than 40 million borrowers stand to benefit from the Student Debt Relief Act. Infrastructure investments in all 50 states, D.C., territories, and throughout tribal nations. The CHIPS bill, major protect to improve American electronic chip manufacturing. The Inflation Reduction Act lowered drug prices, clean energy investments, reduced the deficit by $300 billion, minimum tax for corporations. Steady reduction of Trump-era deficits projected to drop by more than $1.8 trillion. Let's not forget how much debt Donald Trump added to the national debt. Fully vaccinated 79% of American adults produced record amounts of oil in 2023, which is kind of slightly contentious for those of us who are kind of climate people, but still it's something that puts the Republicans in their place about the U.S. being energy independent. Increased the maximum value of Pell Grants by $900, pardoned and released from jail those convicted of minor marijuana use. Taking marijuana off federal Schedule 1 status. Near record low unemployment rate for African Americans. Record low unemployment rate for Hispanics. Brought gas prices down more than $1.60 from the summer 2023 peak. Lowest inflation among all G7 countries. signed a gun safety bill, ended the war in Afghanistan, rejoining climate and nuke treaties, that's the Iran nuclear deal, or certainly trying to, and the Paris Climate Accord. Crime and homicide rates are down from Trump levels, rallied NATO to support Ukraine against Russian aggression, helped Sweden and Finland join NATO. Net farm income has increased to $165 billion compared to Trump in just 3 years. A $35 cap on insulin. I mean, this is amazing stuff, Ron. I mean, it's important that we say it out loud. Veteran health burn pit legislation the GOP didn't want. Major rural broadband expansion. New rules for airlines prohibiting surprise fees and requiring automatic refunds. Saved union and non-union pensions, stopped bank nuisance fees, and Biden's economy extends Social Security and Medicare solvency by years. GOP wants to cut it. I mean, that's just a few. There are more. But the point that I'm making is that all of us could do more to remind people what Joe Biden and what the Democrats have done when the Republicans didn't vote for any of that stuff. Obviously, some of the bipartisan stuff they managed to get through. But the Republicans don't want anything. They just want to halt and stop and reverse. And I really think that in terms of, Trump is such a distraction with his cases and legal situations and national security issues. But at the end of the day, the policies need to speak for themselves.
Well, I mean, Republicans impeached Mayorkas and censored Adam Schiff.
That is a wonderful list of achievements, Ron.
How's that for a list?
What a list. Yeah, very, very successful they are too. Okay, listen, we have to take a quick break. I want to come back and talk about Rudy's 80th birthday party that was interrupted by him being served an indictment. That's next here on Uncovered. What if there was a simple way to reduce your carbon footprint by up to 127%? When food waste goes to landfill, it breaks down into methane, which is a greenhouse gas 80 times stronger than carbon dioxide. Instead, do what I've done. Turn your food waste into nutrient-rich plant food with Lomi. Lomi transforms your home into a climate solution, lowering your carbon footprint and helping keep the planet a little greener and your home a little cleaner. And now, Lomi's new app lets me track my environmental impact, earn points for every cycle, and redeem for freebies from Lomi and other great brands. Don't miss out on your chance to get the best gift for yourself and Mother Earth. Order your Lomi today. Head to lomi.com/uncovered and use the promo code UNCOVERED to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/uncovered and use promo code UNCOVERED at checkout. Thank you, Lomi, for sponsoring this episode. And links to our advertisers can be found in the description below. Ron, you're back in,
maybe.
Are you farmed salmon or are you fresh salmon? I can't tell.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long I'll be here on camera.
We'll
Might
keep
be
going
for a couple minutes.
Okay, we'll keep going. I don't know what's wrong. I just want to remind you that I did send you a link to buy a new camera about 4 months ago. So I'm having nothing to do with this. Do you remember
I think I lost that.
Yeah, I'll send it again. Okay, I want to talk about Rudy Giuliani because, he's celebrating his 80th birthday. In fact, he was trying to sell me coffee in an ad on Instagram yesterday. I don't know if you've seen that ad. He now has he now has his own coffee brand, and he says it's so delicious you can even have it black. And there's a whole story there. Let's take a look at the clip, and then you can tell us what happened here.
Right, and I gotta tell you, right now, this is how dangerous they know this guy is. They have every instrument of state power to crush Rudy Giuliani, to bankrupt him, to put him in jail, to smear him. We're not gonna let it happen.
Yeah.
Not only are you too good a man, you're Rudy, at 80 years old. How many people at 80 years old? Your moment's now finally come. This is what America needs you the most, right?
That's right.
That's right. That's right. And we're not going to win in 2024 unless you're a major part of this. So let's hear it for Rudy Giuliani.
Yeah. How many people are 80 years old? Well, I'll tell you, President Biden's 80 years old, and he's the president, so I think we're doing okay. So shortly after that sequence, somebody shows up with an injunction, right?
Yeah, so there were 18 people indicted in Arizona, and the only one who hadn't been served up to that point was Rudy. They couldn't track him down. He stays in Florida now. He very rarely goes back to New York. And so I guess they were having trouble tracking him down. I think he was probably trying to avoid service. He denies that, but I think that's probably true. And so, of course, he advertised his 80th birthday on his podcast. And so it was done at Caroline Wren's house, who is Carrie Lake's campaign manager, confidant. It was done at her house. Steve Bannon showed up and a few others, Roger Stone. And, they didn't crash the party. I saw online, there was some fake stuff going around that there was somebody in the party who was the process server. That's absolutely not true. They just made that up. They just waited for him to go outside, and most of the people had left. The crime here is that there's no video of him getting served. I've always been pretty good at getting videos of people getting served with stuff, but unfortunately, everybody left around 10 o'clock, and they were live streaming the party. That all ended at 10. Everybody left. Rudy leaves at 11. He was like one of the last people to leave, and then they served him right outside. So unfortunately, it was not on camera, but that did ultimately get him served. Then he has his arraignment yesterday. It was yesterday, the day before. He has his video arraignment in Arizona. He's late for that. He logs on late. Then he was like urinating, or there was water running in the background. He was on a hot mic, didn't know it. Then when he finally gets everything situated and he's on mic, he starts giving this political speech, and the judge finally had to continue to interrupt him and said, "I'm going to cut your mic if you don't shut up." So yeah, typical Rudy.
I mean, we described him, I think, last time as a fall from grace. I mean, it's kind of crazy, isn't it, that all of these people who were once considered to be, part of the fabric of America, America's mayor in his case, really, is it that they've changed under Donald Trump's spell, or is it that they were always this kooky and they just were very good at hiding it?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? With so many of these people. But no, I don't think so. I mean, because I go back and I watch these old interviews sometimes of people like Rudy, and they don't sound the same. They don't talk the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying he was like a heroic person, or I'm not agreeing necessarily that he was a great mayor. But I'm not down with all that. But he was different. He was not crazy. He's not, when he was U.S. attorney prosecuting the mob, he wasn't this nutty. He wasn't this disheveled. And I just think a lot of it's the alcohol, it's the lifestyle, it's the dementia. All of this stuff comes into play with some of these people. And I think you also have to say that Donald Trump brings out the absolute worst in them.
I interviewed Dr. Stephen Hassan on the Weekend Show a couple of weeks ago, and he wrote the book The Cult of Trump, and I'm recommending people watch it. It's here on the Midas Touch Network, and he talked about how people can become radicalized, even smart people, because he was radicalized into a cult back in the 70s. And I think this is the other thing that the media doesn't ever talk about, the mental health aspect, and how it is a national mental health epidemic of being radicalized by this new Trump movement, where people who were quite rational before lose their minds, literally lose their minds to this cult of personality and of politics. And I think that has happened with Rudy Giuliani and everybody in that orbit, where they can only see through their blinded tunnel vision. They can only see Trump and his lies as being their reality.
And we see this happen even at the grassroots level. I mean, we saw it with J6. I mean, there were people that did things on January 6th that they had never done before in their lives.
Yes.
He had taken them to that point where, it's this apocalyptic, talk where everything's going to fall apart. World War III is going to happen unless Donald Trump is in power. And these people tend to believe that. So they act very much like a cult. I mean, buying these NFT cards, sending them all their money. It has all the hallmarks of it. I mean, fist fights in Republican precinct meetings, as we saw again in Arizona this week. This is not the first time we've seen fist fights in Republican meetings before. These people are going at each other. They're so crazy. And yes, this is what Donald Trump has brought. This is not happening in the Democratic Party. You're not seeing this kind of craziness. It's happening in the Republican Party, and it didn't happen in the Republican Party before Trump.
Let's talk about Devin Nunes, because he's panicking, isn't he, over the falling stock price of Donald J. Trump Media, or whatever it's called. This is the Truth, floating Truth Social. So much so that he wants to launch an investigation. Let's take a look.
Something doesn't make sense. I smell. Look, John, I've run a lot of investigations, and this one smells just as dirty as all the other investigations that I've had to run into government malfeasance here. I think there's a lot of bad actors here. And I think between Congress, between the NASDAQ, between state attorney generals, there's going to be more to this story, because we're not going to let up until we get off that list. And it looks like we're operating in a normal marketplace.
Yeah, there's not much normal about a business that doesn't make a profit, makes huge losses, and then gets floated and is apparently worth $7 billion.
So Devin Nunes was a slightly more competent version of James Comer, as a member of Congress, and Jim Jordan. He did nothing. He accomplished nothing, passed no legislation or policies. He conducted investigations that typically went nowhere. And so that's what he did. That's what he knows. Then Donald Trump hires him away from Congress, pays him $1 million a year, plus bonuses, stock options, all of that. Get rich quick. He leaves Congress to run a tech company, which he has no qualifications, experience, or knowledge in how to do that. No marketing skills, nothing. It's failing miserably. It's losing money. It lost $375 million this first quarter of 2024. Those figures were just released the day before yesterday. That's why the stock is struggling. The only reason why the stock has any value at all is because you got these hundreds of thousands of cult MAGA people that have bought shares and are going to hang on to them till the bitter end. That's the only thing propping this up. It's not the smart investors. And so what does Devin do? The only thing he knows how to do, not to run a business, not to turn the business around or make it more valuable. It's to run to Congress and want to do an investigation. And he even volunteered to help Jim Jordan with an investigation into Truth Social. So that's all this guy knows. He has no other answers other than do an investigation that, of course, will go nowhere. The funny part is he's written Jim Jordan 3 times asking him to launch an investigation, and Jim Jordan has ignored him, which is pretty funny, because Jim Jordan was Nunes' apprentice for so long. Interesting.
I get the feeling that Nunes and obviously Trump are panicking because this was their golden goose, wasn't it? This was this project, the idea of floating Truth Social, which has hardly any users, millions of bots. Even when Trump posts on Truth Social, it only gets like a few thousand retweets. It's not like it used to be when he was on Twitter. So they need this to work, because this is going to be paying the bills and making back the money that they've lost. This is they thought this was their kind of get out of jail financially card, but it's not working for them.
This is probably the greatest get rich quick scheme that Donald Trump has ever devised. Yeah. And he's had hundreds of them, from vodka to steaks to mattresses to you name it, ties. He's had 1 million get rich quick schemes that never panned out. The closest thing he came was The Apprentice, but that really wasn't his gig. That was NBC, who made that into a successful business. They just used Donald Trump as the vehicle to do that, but it was their business. And so everything has failed. But this thing everything it was there because you look at the scheme. The scheme is you put out this product, the product is garbage, but you've got this massive cult that you've gained, cult following from politics. So if you get all them to buy these shares in, and then you cash out, you get out, and you leave all of them holding the bag. That's the plan here. But what Donald Trump is furious about.
Therefore, it's a scam, isn't it, Ron? That's what
he's
doing.
Scam.
And he's not just scamming, regular people. He's scamming people that have been radicalized and are committed to the Donald Trump cause. So yet again, this is him fleecing his own people. It's like bait and switch. It's terrible.
And how they don't see it is just crazy. This company has no earnings and it's losing hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're investing in it.
Yeah.
These sheep, and they're going to lose everything, and they don't see it coming. Trump sees it coming. Trump can't get to that deadline. I think in October or September is when he can cash out.
Yes.
And he's just hoping and praying that this stock price will stay up. And that's why Nunes is in such a panic, because he's got a chunk of this company too, these shares, and he's going to do the same thing. They're both going to cash out. What they're hoping is if Nunes keeps going out there and doing this PR war, that's going to at least keep the Trump loyal investors who are probably a little bit nervous watching their shares go down, keep them into holding their shares if they think that help is on the way.
And that is further proof of the psychologist's view of this kind of radicalization and how people have been so brainwashed by this man that they'll literally give him the clothes off their back. Because there's so many of the people that have supported him and continue to, they are the working poor. They do not have disposable income. And yet they're putting all their eggs in the Trump basket. It's a huge risk. And if they haven't worked out by now that it's a scam, then I feel sorry for these people. I don't think it's their fault. I think that, this is what happens. Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933. And so this is why you have to know your history. And you as a former history teacher will, I'm sure, not disagree with that. Let's talk about Christina Bobb.
Well,
finally.
one more point. I mean,
Yes.
What this is really closest to is like a Bernie Madoff situation.
Right, yeah.
Except instead of doing this to wealthy people, he's doing it to working class, middle class people.
Right.
But it's very similar. There's no product. There's nothing there. He's just taking their money.
Yeah, but Bernie Madoff was a Ponzi scheme, right?
Yeah, and that's basically what this is.
That's
True
what this
Social
is
is. Yeah, I think.
Interesting. Okay, Christina Bobb. She is one of Trump's lawyers.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, lawyer, using the term loosely. I don't know how much she's ever been in a courtroom.
Right.
She was an OAN correspondent that he liked.
That's right.
The way she talked about stolen elections, so he hired her as his personal attorney. Yeah,
he really is a genius, isn't he? Well, she's now been handed an indictment as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, she was indicted as part of the Arizona stuff. What makes this crazy is that, when Laura Trump took over the RNC, one of the first things they did was bring in Christina Bobb as their senior counsel for election integrity. And she's now under indictment for trying to undo an election with this fake elector scheme, and which is somewhat ironic. But yeah, what she's now claiming, what she claimed today on Steve Bannon's show, she's cooked up a new conspiracy. Well, first of all, she was the one at Mar-a-Lago when the search warrant was executed. We said that Trump wasn't there. Who was there? Christina Bobb was there.
Yeah.
So what? And all they did is they just said, you have to wait outside. We're going to go in, and then when we return all the items, you have to sign the paperwork that this is what we took.
It was never a raid.
There was no drama.
Yeah, it was a
no
systematic search of the property, as so many warranted searches are done. It was only Trump that pretended it was a raid in the middle of the night.
Right. So she chimed in last night. She posted on Twitter that the FBI was planning to kill me. They were gonna murder me. So here we have the person who's the senior counsel at the RNC claiming that the FBI was plotting to kill her, despite the fact that they were very polite and did nothing to her. That was last night. Then today she goes on Steve Bannon's show and claims that the Arizona indictment was to take her out because that the Democrats are so afraid of her in her new job and so terrified of how effective she is, which is ridiculous because she's a complete clown, that this indictment was to take her off the board, take a chess piece off the board that's critical to Donald Trump, when the reality is the Democratic election lawyers who are decades of experience, won hundreds of cases, are licking their chops that she's their opponent for 2024. They love her being in that position. And also, you know, there were 18 people indicted. It wasn't like this indictment was just about her.
Right. Let's take a look and see if you can fix your camera during this so that we can say goodbye to you in person. All right. Here's Christina Bob.
If I'm wrong, you're head of election integrity at the RNC, are you not, ma'am?
I am. Yep. And interesting, what's funny about that is in February, I received written notification from the Arizona Attorney General's office that they wanted me to come to Arizona to testify before the grand jury. They specifically said in writing I was not under investigation by the grand jury. They reached out to my attorney. My attorney reached out to them, actually, and said, you know, what is this? What are you trying to do? And they said, she's not under investigation. We just want to talk to her, just have her come in, which, you know, I declined. And then a few weeks later, I was named as senior counsel at the RNC for election integrity. And then a few weeks after that, they indicted me. So I'll let you decide if I was indicted for getting a new job.
100%. There's no coincidences. So tell me, is this pressure going to break you? They're trying to break you right now. You're one of the leaders of this movement. You're clearly one of the because they're trying to get to the lawyers. They want to take out John Eastman, Christina Bobb, Boris Epstein, Rudy Giuliani, all of them. Is this going to break you?
It's not going to break me, and I don't think it's going to break anybody else involved. They've been doing this so much that I think everybody that's left, everyone that's still standing that they're trying to take out, has pretty much solidified their position, and nobody's caving. I mean, I don't know. You can talk to the other defendants, but I don't think anyone's caving. I think this is a very united front. I'm very much looking forward to the motions practice in this case. I think we can expect some really kind of fun arguments coming out of this. I think it's an incredibly weak indictment. But no, what the Democrat Party has successfully done, and you actually have done a fantastic job of kind of honing this on the MAGA side, is they have given backbones to the Republican Party that did not have backbones before. For decades, the Republican Party has been weak and impotent and impish and cowardly, and we finally got to a point where we've whittled down to the real fighters who are left, and we're ready to fight.
That's right. The original gangster.
The original gangster. There she is. It's so sad, isn't it, that they're so far down the rabbit hole. The thing I struggle with, Ron, is whether they know that they're lying and they know that they're creating this, you know, false narrative, or whether they are so far down the rabbit hole that this is just, to them, very real. And I can, you know, I think everyone's a little bit different, but I can never really work it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a good question. And I apologize. I've obviously got to get a new camera here. This one just doesn't work.
I'm going to buy you a new camera because it's, you know, it's been going on
We've tried everything,
my friend. Yeah.
So, no, I think each one is different. I think you can tell, like, for Steve Bannon, I think he knows it's all bullshit.
Yes,
you know,
I agree with that.
He knows very well. He knows what she's saying is bullshit. But I think she believes it. She's a true believer. She absolutely believes what she's saying. And so I think each one is on a case-by-case basis. You can kind of tell from watching them long enough and watching their little facial expressions and their mannerisms and their wink and nod stuff. You can kind of tell the ones that believe it and the ones that don't over time.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, we have to finish, but very interesting today. To those watching the video version, I apologize for, why am I apologizing for your camera? You should be apologizing.
I apologize.
If you're listening on the audio podcast, it was a perfect show. You can download the audio podcast tonight. It'll be available wherever you get yours. If you want to watch the show again, then of course rewind and watch it immediately after we finish. And if you would like to join us next week, we will be here on Wednesday at the same time for another episode of Uncovered. Say bye, Ron.
Yeah. See you later, and we will have it fixed.
Okay. Bye for now.